All right, we're live.
Oh, we're good?
Yep.
Good to be in? Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Marquette City Planning Commission for Tuesday, April 6th, 2021. We will start with our roll call. Commissioner Andres?
Present.
Commissioner Middlefelt?
Present.
Commissioner Larson?
Here.
Commissioner Primo?
Here.
Commissioner Brooks?
Here.
And Commissioner Cardillo is here. And then we have our agenda. If there are no comments on the agenda, we can make a motion to approve that.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Commissioner Larson with Commissioner Andres to support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Did anybody have any comments on the minutes? Seeing as how there is none, we will approve those by consent. And now we have our conflict of interest. Does anybody have a conflict of interest they'd like to bring up? Okay, I spoke with Dave earlier about this today. Our first public hearing, the rezoning request at 505 Lakeshore. I just want to clarify that I have a tenant of that building, not the owner, is a client of mine, but I don't stand to sort of have any stake in the game for how this rezoning goes, so we didn't feel it was necessary for me to recuse myself, but I just want to make it clear that I do have that association. So it's a tenant of that building is a client. Okay. So then we can move on to our public hearing, item 01 REZ 0421, rezoning request for vacant land on Lakeshore Boulevard. Andrea?
The Planning Commission is being asked to make a recommendation to the City Commission regarding a request to rezone vacant property located on Lakeshore Boulevard that is zoned municipal to be zoned mixed use. The proposed rezoning of the property adjacent to 505 Lakeshore Boulevard is intended to make the zoning consistent with the rest of 505 Lakeshore Boulevard parcel so that it can be transferred via a quit claim deed. This property in question is a portion of the abandoned LS&I Railroad right-of-way and is unable to be sold due to the deed restrictions originating in the original transfer of the property to the city. The property can only be transferred back into the original parcel if the city chooses to cede ownership of the right-of-way. Attached to the agenda was the staff report, which I'm showing on screen. The rezoning application. The area map. The block map, the parcels outlined in blue. Oops. Sorry. The parcels outlined in blue and it's showing the surrounding zoning. The excerpt of the community master plan, the future land use map, and from the community master plan, the proposed zoning map, photos of the site, and the survey, and also the ad in the paper and the rezoning considerations for the Planning Commission. I did not receive any correspondence for this.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Do we have the applicant here? Do they want to speak on their behalf?
So the applicant would be the city. So if you guys have any questions, it would be Dave or I answering. I'm sorry.
Okay. And then we have no correspondence. There's no public testimony, correct?
Correct. I don't see anyone in the waiting room.
Okay. Yeah, then we can move on to commissioner discussion. And so if somebody wants to suspend the rules or for discussion, otherwise we can do a vote.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules for discussion.
Commissioner Middlefelt, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Primo, seconds. All in favor of suspending the rules for discussion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Middlefeld, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah, I just had some questions about this. I mean, when you look at that site and you see what that area is becoming around it as a mixed-use development, which is a really, I think, lovely addition to commercial activity in an area that's appropriate and everything. And it does seem that it's weird that there's like that tiny little bit of municipally zoned land in an otherwise mixed-use area. And so at first blush, I thought, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. This makes a lot of sense. But then I started thinking about, you know, in our master plan, if you look at that map, the zoning map does have it where there's that tiny little sliver of civic and or municipal, I guess it was, yeah, municipal zoned land on the old railroad bed. And that, I know, like north of that site, that municipal railroad bed gets a lot of use from the community, a lot of dog walkers and everything. And so I guess I was just curious, like my instinct was like, yes, this makes sense for us to approve it, but does that set a precedent for the rest of that railroad corridor? Because I do think in other areas that corridor plays a pretty vital function. And well, unfortunately, as a wildlife corridor, the deer and fox love to go up and down it, also for people walking their dogs and everything. But I was just wondering, I guess a specific question for Andrea and Dave is that municipally zoned railroad corridor, is that all owned by the city? Or is it just zoned municipal for like public civic functions?
The municipal zoning is only for city-owned properties.
Okay, so the city does own that whole
So
corridor.
So instead of the city selling it, they can't sell it because there's a deed restriction when the LS&I Railroad, when they stopped and they gave all their property to the city of that railroad corridor. We can't sell the property. We have to give it to the adjacent landowner. So that's
Okay.
what the city would be looking to do, and then rezone it to mixed use, because that's the use that the adjacent landowner is using it basically right now as.
Okay, so this would not set a precedent for like that whole walkway, the pedestrian corridor to be.
I wouldn't think so. I think this is kind of its own case by case type of thing, looking at it being a little corner chunk that's already being used by the adjacent property owner that's not being used by the city currently.
Okay,
And this is a
Okay.
case where the property owner requested that the city sell the land to the property owner. And the city doesn't have a need for that property. And there's not going to be a trail through there
right.
at this point.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense for that area. I just was wondering about precedent for the rest of that corridor, which I think does serve a pretty good function for lots of different functions. But for this site, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Commissioner Primo?
Yeah, what I don't understand is, we didn't see anything from engineering for public works on this deal. Why is that? Because we're taking a chunk out of that right of way, that railroad right of way. There's railroad right of way to both sides of it.
What was the
On this
question?
map. Why didn't engineering get involved? Because Keith had a plan for that at one time, trying to get the utilities out of the road.
Never heard of that myself. I don't know.
He was at our meeting.
But staff that's here now doesn't see any reason to keep the property anymore.
So engineering was that?
Yeah, they reviewed, I'm pretty sure they reviewed this. There are no utilities going through that
Not yet.
portion of the property. There are no easements. The city doesn't really have any constraints as far as needing to maintain anything there over time.
So then the property that would be to the northwest or southwest, excuse me, would they give that to the property owner of lot, whatever it is there? Lot 538?
The part that's part of McCarty's Cove?
I don't think it is.
538 is McCarty's, the playground at McCarty's Cove.
Yeah. The city did give some of that property on the other side of Michigan Street last year to property owners, though, to square up those lots as part of that lighthouse, kind of that sort of part of that lighthouse project.
Okay, but they're still showing it as city owned on this map.
Yeah, but that's not correct. That hasn't been updated yet in the GIS. That's
Actually, the zoning here is correct. What we sold to them, we see as 0, it has been rezoned and it's not municipal zoning anymore. This right here that's showing municipal is McCarty's Cove area.
well, I thought that lot that's down 610, it was squared off, and that the other parcel was also squared up.
So that hasn't been updated in our GIS layer, but the zoning is correct.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Does that answer your question, Wayne?
yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. I just want to, sorry. Commissioner Dunn has joined us, so just for the records, welcome.
Sorry for being late.
That's okay. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this? No more discussion. Does somebody want to make a motion? Let's see. Well, we either need to discuss it further or somebody should make a motion. Commissioner Larson?
I'll go ahead and, well, before I do that, do we need to go through those questions? Do we need to answer the questions on zoning that, I know we've done that in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can do that. It seems pretty.
But I mean, I think it seems pretty straightforward. Otherwise I'd be happy to make a motion, for it. So I'll just go ahead and make my motion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is it's going to match what's around it. So.
Yep, I agree. All right, after conducting a public hearing and review of the application staff report for 01 REC 0421, the Planning Commission finds that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the community master plan and meets the requirements of the Land Development Code, section 54.1405, and hereby recommends that the City Commission approve 01 REC 0421 as presented.
Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Middlefelt seconds. And I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Andres?
Yes.
Commissioner Middlefelt?
Yep.
Commissioner Larson?
Yes.
Commissioner Primo?
Yes,
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the motion carries. So Moving on, we have citizens wishing to address the commission. Andrea, I don't believe there are any.
Nope.
Okay, and we have no old business, so moving on to new business, we have item 07 SUP 0420, special land use extension request for 200 South Fifth Street, and I will turn it over to you, Andrea.
Attached to the agenda was correspondence from Richard Teggy, Wealth Strategy Group. He's requesting an extension to the previously approved special land use site plan for an attached single-family dwelling located at 200 South Fifth Street. This project will currently expire on April 21st, 2021. Attached also was the excerpt of the April 21st, 2020 Planning Commission minutes. Per the Land Development Code, if action is not taken by the petitioner to implement a special land use within 1 year of that date, its approval by the Planning Commission, that said permit shall expire. So that's why he's asking for an extension. On screen, we have a copy of his letter. That the excerpt of Planning Commission minutes that I mentioned. And that is it.
Okay, do we want to have a discussion about this? Do we want to make a motion? What do you guys feel? Oh, well, Andrea, I should say, sorry, backtrack. Do we have, is the applicant here? Do they want to speak on their own behalf?
There is no one in the waiting room. I did send them the link and
Okay.
they said they would attend, but
Okay. So there's no applicant and then there's nobody, there's no public comment on this. So I think we can move forward to commissioner discussion or vote, depending on how you guys feel about it. Commissioner Middlefelt?
Just to clarify from reading, all he's asking is extra time, right? Not changing anything and.
Yes, so it would be exactly what we approved a year ago, would be extended for a year.
Unless people want to discuss it, I'm happy to make a motion. Do people want to discuss?
Seems pretty, feeling very forgiving in this climate, so.
Yeah. Do we need to, is there formal, I'm not seeing formal language in the agenda for that.
I'll put it on the screen for you.
Oh, okay. We need some help. Oh, there it is. Thank you. All right. So I make a motion that the Planning Commission approves the request for extension for the case 07-SUP-04-20 with the expiration date to be 04/21/22.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Commissioner Larson is the second, and I will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Andres?
Yes.
Commissioner Middlefelt?
Yep.
Commissioner Larson?
Yes.
Commissioner Primo?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so the motion carries. Okay. All right, then we can move on from that. Citizens wishing to address the commission. We have nobody in the waiting room, so we won't spend time on that. Correspondence, reports, minutes of other boards, committees. We don't have anything on that, do we? Or did we?
No.
No, okay. And then we have a work session planning commissioner training primer. Is that, are you gonna do that, Dave, or is that Andrea?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay.
I think
Hand it
Andrew
over to Dave.
checked out for a while. Yeah, so nice long break from meetings. Everybody seems to remember what we do though. So it's good though to go over a few things every once in a while, some of the basics. So I put these in your in the agenda. I'm going to share my find my. none of that stuff. There we go. Okay, that one. From the Michigan Planner, is that what you're all looking at now?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
So obviously, this is a nice little brief kind of, you know, there's versions of this that are 30 pages long. This is a really nice little brief, kind of concise primer on main points. And, you know, I don't need to tell you all you act appropriately at the meetings. I've never had an issue with that. Preparation thing is obviously a lot more difficult depending on people's schedules. We have a lot of cases where you would ideally at least do a drive-by of the site if there's something, you know, complex about it and the decision making that's going to be discussed, and you can't always do that. So, you know, we do try to give you a lot of information. Of course, some of these agendas are, you get so much information that you really struggle with adequate preparation, but just do your best, you know, and you can always call Andrea or I, or, you know, we can ask other staff members if we don't know the answer, or even sometimes the city attorney, if it's a legal question. But, you know, we don't like being put on the spot any more than anybody else does in a meeting with questions that are really difficult. So, and this is a board where we get that all the time. The city commission is lucky in that, you know, they have all the content experts there. They have the department heads that need to be there. They have the city attorney, the chief of police. You know, they have a lot of people at their disposal to answer questions, and we do our best. And I know we don't always answer questions thoroughly or accurately 100%. Sometimes we have to do a little guessing when we're on the spot, but that's where it helps. If you guys have, you know, anything, I appreciate it if you can call and talk to us about it ahead of time. Other than that, one important thing I think on here is the number 2 thing, reserving comments until the meeting. You know, I was asked about this a couple of times in the past year by planning commission members about, is it appropriate to talk to the neighbors in particular about this proposal? And, you know, the answer is that the best thing to do is to not really get into giving your opinion about something, because you are sort of, on some of these cases, almost like it's quasi judicial, and you know, it could come back to haunt you by giving your opinion on something. But it's just not, you know, the advice from the experts is just be polite and say, you know, I'm not supposed to discuss this outside of the meeting because we're sort of, you know, it's sort of a quasi judicial hearing. You guys walk that line between administrators and judges on some of these situations. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, you're not supposed to email each other, have any kind of meeting kind of stuff outside of the loop that the staff keeps you in for these cases. The next thing is about recusing yourself. Joy did a great example tonight where Joy just put it out there that she's got something. It's remote, very remote possibility that there's any kind of benefit to her from working for somebody that has an office in or a shop in that facility. But that's the right thing to do, just to say that you have a conflict. Now, if there's a financial benefit, that's obviously a conflict. And that's the one thing where you obviously have a conflict. And that's where we really just need to say, I can't, this is something I can't vote on because of that. And you're actually supposed to leave the meeting if you can't vote on it. So that's the right thing to do in that case. The Roberts Rules of Order part of this is what we're going to talk about for about 5 minutes, and then we'll be done.
I just want to, I see Commissioner Andres has his hand up. I just wanted to let you know that.
I had a question about corresponded by email. So when we reply to all, are we not conducting an informal meeting? So we should refrain from replying to all.
Right. Okay. Asking what time the meeting is, or
right.
Something like that. Anything though that's where there's an opinion or discussion of the case is not supposed to be done outside of an open meeting. So good question. You all do have the remote possibility, in case the city was sued over a planning commission case, of having your email subject to FOIA procedures. If you're using an email for city business, that you could have to surrender email in that case. That's the way we tried to have everybody with city email. And we did for some time. We had email accounts, and that broke down, and the city quit issuing those for planning commissioners. And that was not anything to do with our department. It was the IT department basically said they're too expensive. They didn't have it in the budget, whatever. And I think they had a hard time keeping up with it too. With the change, we had quite a bit of turnover for a few years. So just be cognizant of that. There shouldn't be any reason for you to worry about that at all. Especially that, then that's one reason why you don't want to really engage in any kind of email conversation about cases with other commissioners or staff, unless it's just generally asking for facts. So on the Roberts Rules of Order, the main thing here on the small boards, business and small boards, it's basically a small board, and we use these kind of relaxed rules that are common in small boards. And one of a couple of features there are when we have debate, when we do this thing we often do where somebody motions to suspend the rules for discussion, we generally allow that to be pretty free-ranging, and it's the chair's decision on how that's conducted. But it's important that the chair is the one that the members speak to. That's something that we get lazy on or we forget, and that's not a good practice. So it's harder with Zoom, obviously. We've had some times recently where, like, Aaron's background was hiding his hand, or it was hard for Joy to see. But that's the way it should go, is, you hold your hand up, get the chair's attention, and then address your question basically to the chair. And that kind of helps with the getting keeping things in control or not getting too out of control. The chair also would do well to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. I think we generally do a good job of that, but making sure that especially after we've kind of gone around and round with several questions in the same vein on the same topic, it's good for the chair to ask if anyone else has another item to discuss or another comment. We always do this motions with a second. There's some, I guess there's a slide here that says some boards, they don't second motions. I'm not sure. I didn't really look at that because it's not really relevant. But one thing on that topic that is relevant is if somebody makes a motion and you're not really sure, don't second it. I mean, if you're not really sure, it's harder to, that's the kind of last thing I want to cover is the amendment of motions. Amendment of motions can be a real pain when we've got a real complex kind of a motion, and so there's two options. A motion that's seconded has to be voted on. So either the vote, if there is an amendment that the planning commission discusses that motion that's been seconded and comes to the realization that they really don't want that motion, they want a different motion, they want to amend that motion, the choice is to either make a motion to amend and then go through that language of the amendment to the motion and then vote on that, go back to the original motion and vote on that with the amendment. But you could also just not vote on the initial. You could vote no on the initial amendment. Even the person that made the vote can vote no. So sometimes that's a cleaner way to address the motion, is just the motion you want to amend is just to say, okay, well, instead of amending this motion, I would, the person that makes it, made the motion, if they feel like the amendment's appropriate, they should probably be the person that says, hey, I'm good with us not approving this motion and making somebody else making a new one. But so two different approaches there, and I just wanted to put that out there. I don't really have anything else. I don't think. Just one little curious thing I mentioned to Joy before is that Robert's Rules of Order say that the chair, it really doesn't need to vote unless there's a tie. We've never done that since I've been here. I've never seen that done. But that's why the chair always votes last, so as not to influence the rest of the board. The chair, everybody else votes first, but in a lot of boards, the chair doesn't even vote unless it's a tie. Just something for interest.
Commissioner Dunn?
I had a question about the second, and if there's room to have discussion after a motion is made, but before a second, because I've been stuck in the situation where, initially I would have wanted to second a motion, but then something comes up for a reason not to, and I kind of want to say why I'm not seconding it.
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if you're allowed to have that discussion in between the motion and the second.
A good question.
I'll have to get back to you on that. Let me research that one. I think in a small board with relaxed rules, you can kind of get away with it. But I'll do the research and give you the answer from the book. That is a good question, though. That's one that is a little. It's kind of up to the chair. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't really meet the Roberts Rules standards that happens in our particular board. And it's kind of just a small town. But sometimes these, when we get a lot of business on an agenda and you don't really know, it doesn't look good and it doesn't feel good to kind of be stuck in, well, what's the right thing to do situation.
Commissioner Dunn?
The other question I had was, we frequently make a motion to suspend the rules for discussion. Is that something that we could sort of make a permanent procedure where we conduct discussion prior to a motion being made?
You don't have to do anything different. The rules allow that as long as you make it a motion. You have to make a motion to do that, though, because the rules do say that once you've considered all the testimony in the material, you're supposed to then either make a motion or you're supposed to have a debate with the rules being relaxed by a motion before you have the debate.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add, I think this is really great for you to point this out, Dave. I think, as Commissioner Dunn pointed out, we've had some really complex motions, and I think everybody's done a really good job of really trying to put together motions that are specific and really sort of state our case. And I really would prefer that we err on the side of put it out there, and we can always don't feel bad if we okay, the language isn't right, let's vote it down so that we can get it right. I think that it's really worth it to, and I think we've been working towards getting to this point where we sort of get the motion right. And even if it takes sort of voting the first draft down, I appreciate, especially as the chair, I can't make the motions. I appreciate the effort that you guys put into getting the language right, because I do think it's really important. I think we've learned on a couple of cases in the last few years that getting the language right does matter.
So that's all I have, unless anybody else has questions or anything they want me to research. Keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Dave. That was very helpful. It's always good to rediscuss these things and make sure we're all fresh on it. Okay, if we're closing that, we can move on to commissioner staff and comments. I know Andrea was mentioning something about resuming in person, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that. So why don't we start with you, Andrea?
Well, tentatively, we may be meeting in person in June. That's kind of what we heard. So just to get you guys prepared for it, it looks like May will probably be the last of our Zooming.
And that's because, if I add to that, the city commission right now they're committed to starting their in-person meetings again with the public, some limited capacity for the public to be in the room in June. And they want the other boards to kind of get on the same schedule as them the same month. So that's the plan right now.
You said April, correct?
What?
June.
You said April, right? June. Okay. Yeah, this month. Sorry.
April has left the gate. Okay. Do you have anything else you want to add, Dave?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Andres, do you have any comments?
Good meeting, thanks.
Commissioner Middlefelt?
I had a question for maybe Dave or Andrea. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I did email Dave about it, and I just was wondering about all the tree clearing that's happening on Lakeshore Boulevard along the coastline. You know, several of us were involved in a year-long project looking at coastal resilience in Marquette, and we heard from coastal geomorphologists and everything about the importance of like using ecosystem services along the coast to maintain the integrity. And then, you know, you go up the coastline and you see there's a bunch of trees cut down like right along the shore. And so every time I go by there, I scratch my head. I'm like, why are we reducing the resiliency of our coastline? Do you know who made that decision and why they made that decision, Dave or Andrea?
I don't know where you're talking about exactly.
Pretty much all the way north between, if you go along the new bike path or the new road between Wright Street and all the way up to Presque Isle, they've done considerable clearing of trees like right along the shoreline. And I just was wondering if that was like, I just was wondering what the rationale was for that.
I would think that just based on the plans I've seen for the phase 2, that those trees are pretty much all going to be removed as part of that next phase of the project. Probably, you know, part of it's installing the subsurface revetment. I'm just guessing here that's got to come, and then there's the actual rehabbing the dune and dune environment.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if they're trying to like restore it to like dune grass and beach and swale or something.
That's the plan.
Okay.
I don't think the funding is quite in place to start that. I would have to ask so Carl from the Superior Watershed Partnership, because they're going to probably be the ones doing that work, and they may have been the ones who have started that. But I think that would have to happen for them to restore the coastline to the condition that we want it, or is proposed for phase 2.
Okay, maybe I'll reach out to Carl and just pick his brain. I was just wondering if you knew. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Primo.
Yeah, all I want to do is congratulate Sarah, and her name was on there on your Superior Watershed, or, you know, the lake front there. I thought that was very good. The pages were so bright that it was hard to read the words. And I was interested to know that it said that the Native Americans, or whatever you want to call them, were here 1,500 years ago. I don't know where you got that information, because I think there's information out there that goes way back beyond that.
Yeah, that's when most historians say that's when the Anishinaabe came here, but there were like older groups of Native people that lived here. But that's usually when they say Anishinaabe people came to Marquette. But thank you. Appreciate it, Wayne. Thank you for the positive feedback.
That was pretty nice. I didn't understand it, of course, but nice.
Oh, really? Oh, we wanted it to be accessible.
Yeah.
You did. I'm sure you did.
That was nice. It really was.
Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, it was great to work with Joe and Joy. Studio Red did some wonderful illustrations on that. It really made it colorful and fun to read, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great project to be a part of. Commissioner Brooks.
All good, thanks.
Commissioner Dunn.
I had a concern about the crossing out on 553 right by Marquette Mountain. both going from the parking lot to the ski area and also up where the bike for the mountain bike trails where the parking is there. I'm just wondering if somebody can kind of steer me in the right direction or if there's anything we can do about it, but there needs to be some sort of pedestrian crossing there. I'm very concerned that it's just a matter of time before somebody dies out there. People walking across the road with skis and boots and poles and kids, and it's just a disaster waiting to happen. The cars go through at 60 miles an hour right there, and for the mountain bikers going across too, if they happen to not be paying attention for a second, it's over. So I'm just wondering if there's someone out there that can kind of give me some direction as to where to go with that.
Commissioner Brooks, did you have a thought on that?
Isn't that the township though? The actual ski hill itself?
No, it's just inside the city line is like right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah,
is
because there was a pedestrian killed there about 20 years ago. He was a Levine, was it? He was a Morrison. Charlie Morrison's dad was leaving the T-bar there and got hit by a car and killed.
oh, wow.
But yeah, I agree with Mike Dunn. I drive by there all the time thinking, yeah, it's dangerous and very congested and the roads are terrible. So I don't think it's a bad topic to address.
No, I think the city is looking into that. I think that there have been people that have contacted the police, and that part of the highway is controlled by the state. So I will ask that question. We have a corridor advisory group meeting coming up on the 13th, and I will bring that question up at the meeting. We're going to be looking at the site plans for development on South US 41 at that meeting. Those that case will be on your agenda for the next meeting, right, Andrea?
Correct.
Yeah. So and then there's some other potential development down there, but so we don't bring cases to them all that often, but we have one on the 13th, and I'll ask what's happening with that request, because I know other people have brought that up just in the past couple months. So yeah, it definitely is an issue, and I would think that our staff, that's our police and the traffic advisory committee, are all aware of that and kind of in the loop with MDOT, but I'll find out and report back to you.
Thank you. Commissioner Larson.
No comment.
Okay. Did I get everybody? Dave?
Yeah, just so I will retract and go back and say I do have a little commentary. On that subject that Michael brought up, Michael Dunn, the South US or the South US 41 M28 South Front Street corridor in South Marquette, that is going to be subject to reconstruction beginning this summer, and the MDOT is looking at closing. I think there's 7 curb cuts they've identified through there that they want to close. We had a meeting where we went, they asked the city for input on the corridor and changes that we'd like to see in the corridor. So we came up with a list of things and mapped them out with pedestrian safety improvements, including looking at putting a boulevard in there. So that would include a pedestrian refuge island where Craig Street ends by the Women's Center. There is, you guys might not all know this, but there's a little extension of the bike path that goes out to South Front Street basically across from where Craig Street ends. On Craig Street comes down the slope from, in South Marquette, and the street was never built, but it's a right of way next to the Women's Center on that block that fronts between Front Street and Division. So there's still street right of way in there, and that would, in my mind, be a nice place, an ideal place, because it connects up with that bike path. And then sidewalk extensions along a good part of that street. MDOT won't fund the sidewalk, so the city is on the hook for funding any sidewalks there. But basically, they won't do any of the. We asked about a mid-block crossing there at Craig Street with a pedestrian refuge island. They won't do that. It just, none of that stuff kind of meets their criteria, and they say there's hazards for putting speed tables in or anything to slow cars down coming down through there. It's really frustrating, because I think that part of the city really needs traffic calming. And so I'm still not sure if there's what they're going to do at the intersection of Front and Genesee, but they promised they would try to do something with the signal timing there and to make the crossing a little more visible. So I'm still not sure what that means, but we tried to at least get them to buy into some things there to make it prioritize pedestrians more than cars. But they've got such a large volume of cars that go through there. They're kind of, they say their hands are tied by the rules that they have for, getting cars through the intersection as quickly, as efficiently as possible. It's unfortunate, but that's what we're dealing with there.
Okay, well, keep us posted on that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I just wanted to say thank you for giving us a pretty straightforward agenda to ease back in with. Also, I just wanted to ask if you've been in touch with the transportation board. I know Taylor Clip had been talking about wanting to come and talk to us, and I just want to make sure that the lines of communication are open with them, should they be ready to move anything forward.
Yeah, Mark Tran, we haven't had any discussion with Mark Tran. I would kind of prefer to have Taylor move things along. I also talked to another one of the city appointees to Mark Tran just a couple weeks ago, and he didn't actually, we didn't discuss the transit situation, but this is a person that I've had a lot of discussion with transit on in the past. So I should be talking to Taylor again soon. I'll put that on my list of stuff to do some research on and report back. Hopefully Taylor can do some kind of a presentation to you soon.
Oh, Commissioner Andres?
Is David Boyd still on that board?
Yeah, he's the person I was talking to. I talked to him just a couple weeks ago about something unrelated to Mark Tran.
Sounds good, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. All right, does that cover everybody? Any stray comments? All right, then with that, we're coming in just under an hour, which is awesome. Welcome back, everybody, and I will adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, everyone.